What's up? That was a great talk. Thanks so much. And let's there we go. Looked like something was still tweaking out in the background. We have from Happy Hive, we have Kaaren Whitney Vernon, and she's going to be talking about the one word that can help you hire better. So take it away.
Thanks so much. And it's great to be here. It's always a little strange to be presenting in front of my computer. So bear with me as I get used to this, but it's great to be here. And I want to start with a story and focus on 1982. It was at the height of the Atari game business. And there was a young man who was given a very impossible task. He had to create a game for a movie. And back in the 80s, this was rare to pair a movie with a game. So he went about this task, and he was given 5 weeks. And the person he was doing the film for was none other than Steven Spielberg. And his name was Howard Warshaw. And you might all know this story because it's infamous in the gaming business. But he went on, and he only had 5 weeks to create this game. So he got all the machines into his house, and he worked on it tirelessly. And he put his heart and soul into making this game. And for 5 weeks, that's all he did. He didn't eat, he didn't sleep. He just sat there and did this game. He had no outside input. He only once talked to Steven Spielberg, who thought it was a little bit out of control, the game. But in the end, he just he approved it. And I think everybody knows the story. It was released, and it's considered the worst video game ever. And not only did Howard never work in the industry again, that was it for him, but soon after, Atari actually closed its doors. Now, it's not only because this was a terrible game, but really what it was showing was the power of being all on your own, creating a game and with no outside input, and just thinking that what you're doing is right. And that's not how we work anymore. We work together. We work to come up with ideas. We work with the idea of diversity and having different ideas coming into the game. Now, some of you might have heard now, there's a group of gaming enthusiasts that have gone to New Mexico, and they've actually filmed the recovering and the excavation of the Atari site, because they were so interested in seeing what this was all about and finding these games and seeing if it really was a dumping ground for this. So I think they even made a movie out of this. But again, at the time, E.T. was such a huge, powerful thing, but the game was just so confusing. And again, in Howard's mind, he had the best idea he thought that anybody could ever do. So we know now that there is the importance of different people coming in. And also, when you think about it, the world has changed now. We are never going to have the same environment that we did before, where with work. We've got hybrid work, we've got remote work. People are really challenged with getting people back in the office. I mean, they're trying incentives, they're trying all sorts of ways to get people to come back into the office. So we know we are never going to go back into the office full time, or at least a lot of us aren't. And that is changing the dynamics. I mean, how do you create a sense of a community of your company? How do you pull together the culture and talk about what you're doing when half the people are at home or working remotely? I think the expectations of employees is greater. I know we're having a little bit of a reset, you see, in a lot of the big tech companies that are downsizing right now, but the reality is still people are hiring. It's a lot of hiring going on. There's a lot of pressure on hiring managers. We still have this old advantage of, I can find the best people doing the same method that I've always done in the past. The expectation of employees is much greater. We want more autonomy. We want more thoughts on how we work. There's more demands, not just on money, but on lifestyle choices and how we're going to provide for our employers are going to provide. But it doesn't just stop there. There's also a social element now that's important. Like, we are looking at people and saying, we're expecting companies to step up into areas that we thought usually governments or people would do. And now companies are expected to kind of take on social roles and stand up for the rights of underserved people. We've had, so I think that has changed as well, what we are expected to do and where we should go with this. Workers are demanding better treatment. And I think the gaming industry, you've seen a lot of, whether it is people setting up unions, trying to set up unions for better pay and better treatment, because the thought has always been, well, there's somebody else just there that I can fill them up with. But as I said, this new generation, Gen Z, millennials, their expectation is greater, and they're not going to put up with that for long. So I think having an understanding of that is really important. And I think companies are still trying to figure out how they do this. This has never been happened before. Developing a company or building a company, the number one priority is hiring the right people. And that is surveys done, asking this question. So it's not that's a standard kind of response to what is your number one priority for building your company. The problem is we have this really attached belief in meritocracy. And so what I mean by that is that we think that we have the ability as hiring managers, as company owners, to find the right people just by looking at a resume, just by interviewing them. And that this idea of meritocracy is unbiased. We don't have any biases about it. We are hiring the best people because we look at them and we think they're the best people. But I want to give you an example of story where this isn't the case. And it really showcases what happens when people believe that meritocracy is the only way to hire. So the New York Philharmonic, very famous orchestra, and for years and years, 50s, 60s, they always had 100% men in the orchestra. There were no women. And they always believed that they were hiring the best musicians. And remember, this is subjective, the best violinists, the best pianists, the best cello players. They believed that they had the best. And so for years, that's all that people saw was a full male orchestra. And then one day in the 70s, when there was a lot of pushback from women about having greater rights, they decided to try something new. And what they did is they put up a screen, as simple as a screen, and they asked the people to come on an audition. So I would listen to the players, and after the first year, they increased the number of women to 30%. So the idea of the best, you have to question it. Are you really getting the best? Or are you getting the best according to you as who you are and your experience? The other thing is, I love this. I was looking across sort of like what we're doing with our job description. So we're out there and we're saying, we need more people. We're hiring for these positions. And what has happened, we call it job creep. So what happens is we start to think that we can provide a lot, we can find that unicorn, even for an entry-level job. And we start adding on more and more and more. And in fact, what the research has found is that people will just take an old, and tell me if you've done this yourself, but you'll take an old job description that maybe someone had done 2 or 3 years ago. And things have changed in 2 or 3 years. We know with technology, things are changing rapidly. And rather than going through it and mindfully deciding what you want and what you don't really need anymore, they just add on and they add on and they add on. They don't provide anything to do with compensation. They don't talk about expectations other than here's a list of things that we expect you to do. And you know what that does? That first of all, most women, for example, if they don't have at least 95% of what they're seeing on that job description, they won't even apply. In fact, it deters a lot of people from even applying. And there could be really great people that you're overlooking because of your first entry into talking to anybody is this blast of words and expectations, and you're not giving anything back to the person looking at it. So I think there has to be a little bit of consideration for your what your expectation is, but also what are you giving in return? What are you providing them? You know, and I think this is a first place to look. This is the first entry of what you're showing to people in your company. So what are we doing wrong today? As we said, we are filtering so much out of these systems, and we think technology, and I know a lot of people here obviously are in technology and understand the technology, but in terms of your ATS systems that you're using to go through hundreds and hundreds of resumes, the algorithms that you often have created or someone has created for you is often, again, based on proxies that might be old. And what I mean by proxies is you might have put in there, need a 4-year degree. I want a 4-year degree from these universities. And you might have based that criteria on the fact that the people that you've hired in the past have all come from this school, have this background. And so you put that criteria into part of your ATS system. And the algorithms that are looking at it are kind of churning it out and going through it. So first of all, you use these proxies that might be outdated and are irrelevant, are not the main point of what you're trying to get across and what you're trying to hire. And that screening software is searching for, again, something very particular that might have been in your past, but is not your future. Because again, algorithms can only work on what you have, data that you have from the past. What we're really saying is now things have changed. So are you looking at even that initial reaction to how do you go through resumes? How do you even look at what you're doing and who you're picking as part of your team? And if you don't understand the algorithms or somebody else has created the algorithm, you have to question what proxies they're using, how they've set up the data sets. Really look at what you're doing, because that simple process could weed out great employees for your company. The other thing is, if you think you're looking for 100% of those skills from somebody, again, you might be missing out on somebody who has 80% of those skills and has a great ability to bring people together and has other, what I'll call, for lack of a word, soft skills that can help communicate ideas, can help bring things together. And with just a bit of training, they could be one of your best employees. But you'll never know, because you've created this system that becomes really, it's almost, as I said, it's not allowing people to even get through your filters. And I think, when you look at the gaming industry now, the talent pool, we talked a little bit about, everyone's talking about all this redistribution of talent. As you know, in the gaming industry, a lot of these big companies have got involved in gaming. So it's not just Google as a search company or Apple as a search company. They are controlling a lot of how gaming is either being distributed or received. And there is a redistribution of this talent pool that's happening right now. And you might think it has nothing to do with you because it's technology. But again, there's such an interplay now of technology companies and gaming companies that even this idea of redistribution of talent pool, some people are seeing it as an opportunity to look for people that come from other industries and maybe bringing them into the gaming world. And with the onset of things like that we're seeing with the metaverse or Web 3.0, a lot of the talents that the gaming industry has already created and already understands is going to be poached from other industries. So this idea that we're in this little streams of talent has changed. Everything is being redistributed, and it's becoming less independent than it used to be before. So what can we do? What is it? What can we learn today in the next half an hour or so that we can really make for improving our access to great people, making a great company? Because I do want to talk about this idea of creating a great company. And I do think we have a secret weapon, and I think we're missing out on it. And I think that secret weapon is creating a new pool. we keep getting talent from the same places. Let's start something new. And let's look at people that we might have overlooked. And we believe at Happy Hive that DEI, diversity, inclusion, and equity, is so much a part of that secret tool and that idea of finding new talent and of really understanding that we can broaden our ideas. Because let's face it, the gaming world now, the amount of women that are playing games is increasing all the time. And having somebody in part of your group that understands a large part of that demographic that's playing your games is an important element. And I really do want to talk a little bit about why that is important to us. But first of all, I really want to understand, if people know what diversity and inclusion means, and what it means to you. And just think about it for a minute, because I think people have different ideas on what it means. And I think we need to look at that a little bit more closely. So I'm just going to read this because I think it's important. Diversity refers to the traits and characteristics that make people unique, while inclusion refers to the behaviors and social norms that ensure people feel a sense of belonging. They feel welcome, valued, and have support of the organization. So while you might, and we've seen it time and time again, where people will say, oh, we've hired X, we've got a diversity team, we're making sure we're hiring X amount of women or people from underrepresented groups to be part of our teams, but then they're missing the inclusion part. And so they wonder, well, we hired 3 women, but they didn't stay. So that's where the inclusion comes in. What have you done in your organization to create a safe space for those people that have different views and behaviors, so they don't feel like they're being left out, or they don't feel like they're not being listened to or being valued? And they do have the support of the company and of their colleagues. So I think that is important. And I want to talk a little bit about a story. I think it was probably 2014. We had an opportunity, or Apple had an opportunity, to create the most comprehensive tracking system, health tracking system in the world. They came out, big fanfare. They're telling everybody, oh my gosh, we have this amazing new product. It can tell you everything. It can talk to you about your calories burned, what your sleep was. It went to what your blood sugar level was, your malignanite level, which I had to look up what that even meant. And they had all this. They put it to big fanfare. They launched it. And they were very proud of it. They had a lot of press around it. And very soon after they launched it, there was a group of women that started coming up and saying, you're missing a very fundamental part of most of us. And that is, you have no period tracker, no menstruation tracker, nothing to talk about women. So this was a very expensive, costly mistake, which could have been solved very easily by having women as part of the decision-making team, part of building the program. And it is that environment that I think is important, even if you're a small company, for you really to view and to understand and to consider. If you are building products that you think other people are going to use other than yourself sitting around the table. There are countless examples, like Apple, of people that have launched products that are missing a key fundamental thing for specific groups of people. And again, I'm going back to it when we talked at the very beginning about people that feel a need to connect with companies that care about society. By having that diversity and that openness to different ideas, you're going to create a really wonderful product, a wonderful team, and a great company. So, but it's not just a question of what I'm saying here. I mean, there is a ton of research out there that talks about why diversity matters. And it matters in all sorts of ways, and it has profound effect on a company. So these are individuals like Anita Woolley. She's been researching this idea of diversity on teams. And it's so interesting because one of her main things on diversity and what makes up a good team and was more women. So the more women that they had on the team, sometimes what they found, the greater the idea, the concept of it spreading around the company and being embedded within the company. So it goes beyond just the team itself, but it actually helps to build a stronger company. We've seen research on the collaboration that happens, decision making becomes better. There's reduced conflict in a sense, but it's attractive also to new hires. Often people will ask, who's on your board? I mean, that's one of the things we track at Happy Hive is who's on people's boards, how many women make up their management teams. Those are important questions now that people are looking for. Retention and stability, the more women that they're there, that the greater the chance that you'll keep your company strong and together. Profitability. They've done a huge study in Australia with every company that was on publicly traded company on the Australian Stock Exchange. And they found that the companies that had at least 30% women on their board had a much greater return year over year. So again, those studies are out there. If you're questioning why is it important? Why do I even care? That gives you a lot of reasons why you should be looking at this as an idea. Now, there are a lot of companies that have struggled with this, and I know I hear it time and time again from tech and even some gaming companies where it's like, we want to hire more women, but we just can't find them. And again, I've gone through some of those things that we're putting in place that already prevent that from happening. But Etsy had the same problem. But Etsy, the challenge they had was that 90% of their audience were women. And yet they had less than 15% of their people that were designing and building the programs and the apps were men. So they thought, this doesn't make sense. And so one of their senior executives decided that he was going to set up these boot camps. And the boot camps would be exclusively put at Etsy. But instead of advertising, because normally when they did the boot camps, they still had predominantly 80-90% men coming to the boot camp. So they were saying, okay, well, that's not working. So what can we do next? So they looked at, again, where are the advertising? Where are they actually putting their ads to find people? And they realized they were putting it, again, in places that most men would go to, but not women. So the women weren't even finding out about this opportunity. So they decided, okay, we're going to advertise and promote this in areas where we know women are going to be, that are interested in technology and that are part of it. And they brought them into these boot camps. But the other interesting thing too is they realized that boot camps can be expensive. You're in New York. Etsy was in New York. It could be hard for some people that really wanted to get into the industry. So they set up a $5,000 stipend for each one of these people that came in. And there was no guarantee of a job. It was just a stipend to say, hey, come and we'll train you. And they spent the next 3 months training them on they called it hacker school, but they trained them on different elements that they needed at that time at their company. And they created this pool of students that they then ran this program. And they were able to recruit more and more women. And actually, they changed their dynamics, their numbers of women in their company that were working in the technical field, again, not overall, but in the technical area, from less than 15% to close to 30%. So within those 2 years, they were able to double it and retain the women because there was such a sense of loyalty. You've given me an opportunity when no one else did. You provided me with training, with knowledge. So you're getting a different hire than what you might get if they were just going out and poaching from Pinterest or from Google. Because if you go and you poach a person from another company, often the only reason why they're leaving, because they're not actively recruiting for a new job, the only reason they're leaving is because of money. So you're actually increasing the amount of money you actually end up paying for people if you keep poaching. And what Etsy found was, they said they made a record $4.2 billion. So it was up 16.5 year over year after they did this program and had more women in their group. So I think that was based on a 2-year average, looking at it. So I think the idea of really looking at what they were able to do and how they were able to change that company, but they did it in a very unique way, and they questioned everything. Every time, every part of the way, they looked at it, what they were doing and how they were doing it. And again, there's something wonderful about 30. Again, research has shown that 30 is a pivotal point when people that are in either a disadvantaged group or a group that has lower representation, they will actually feel part, and they feel strength in those numbers, and it can change the dynamics of a team. So it's not just a question about having, again, women on a team. It's a question about the number of women and how you go about recruiting them and getting them part of it. But they're not the only ones that have struggled. I think when we look at it, what we can learn with this is they were very transparent in what they were trying to do and how they were trying to achieve their access to new people. They made it publicly announced that they lacked the number of women. Once you make a public announcement, it's very hard to go away from it. So they were very transparent about what they were trying to do and who they were trying to support. They also analyzed everything. They analyzed the cost of switching from this new way of hiring, which was using boot camps and training people that maybe didn't have quite the skills they were looking for, to the old way of going out and poaching from other areas. And even with the cost of $5,000 that would go to these 30 students that they were supporting, was less expensive than hiring somebody to do the recruitment, going out and then paying fees for that. So they actually analyze the cost. And I think it's important that we look at this as a value, not just of doing this as a nice to have. This is not a nice to have anymore. This is a business decision. This is really important for us to look at why we're doing things and analyze it as we would any other thing in our business. Sales, business expenses, we have to look at these costs and really understand them. But they didn't lower their standards. They didn't. And that's another thing. People say, oh, well, we had to lower our standards to get, other people in. No, they didn't. The school allowed them to really push through what was important, what the expectation was. And as I mentioned, not everyone was hired from that group. They all had great training and they all had great, but the ones that really stood out or the ones they liked were the ones that ended up being part of it. The other thing that was really interesting is if you talk to a lot of people, and I know a lot of you will probably do some sort of technical interview when you're there, but if you talk to a lot of people that are managing these interviews and going through them, they actually say they're terrible. They actually think that they're not a good way of understanding the value that somebody brings to the table and what they're able to learn, how they learn. It's really missing a lot of that. So I think it's important that to look again at every aspect of what you're doing to really understand where you sit and what you're trying to achieve. So Etsy was the other one that was trying to do this too. I mean, companies like Microsoft were really struggling with getting a more diverse team, and they had tried again to look at it, and they couldn't meet their goals. And they were transparent. They were saying, we're trying to get to this amount of women in our group, or diversity in general, people from disadvantaged groups or underrepresented groups. And so they made a bold move. They actually tied compensation to this. And again, they looked at it as a business imperative. They didn't just look at it as, oh, it's great, this is a nice to have. Yeah, let's just throw some women, let's just throw some people that have disabilities on our team, and then we're done with it. No. They made it a business imperative. Again, it's back to looking at, does this actually drive business? Do you get better products, better customers, a better company because of diversity and inclusion? And if you don't, well, then you at least have the numbers to back up what you've tried. But I think Microsoft really did they looked at their senior executives and they said, if by this end, you're not only going to be evaluated on your qualifications, what you've provided and your sales and your team, but you're going to be also compensated on the way that you hire and who you hire and how you do that. And it became a core priority, just like any other business. And I think today Microsoft has 22% women globally. Now that's globally. And in technical roles alone, Microsoft has 49% more women than they did when they started this program. They've seen, I think, a 56% increase in their executives team, and their technical roles have doubled since they've done this. So overall, it's attributed to a lot of factors, but one of the key areas they really believe in is compensating their executive team based on this criteria. So key learnings here, as we said, they saw this growth of women in technical roles, but the other thing was also double-digit revenue growth. So again, I want to get away from that thinking this is a nice to have, but not a need to have. It is a need to have. It will change your business. It will increase your revenue, and it will make a better workplace. So again, the key learnings here was diversity was a business priority, and they held managers accountable for what they were doing. But again, I'm going back, they measured the progress. And I know it can seem a little daunting if you're a small company to go, okay, I gotta, Microsoft, great, they're a massive company, they have people that can do this. But again, you're measuring your sales. It's a line item. You measure your hiring and how long people stay. And I think the other key element that Microsoft and now a lot of companies are doing is they actually publish their workforce data. They make it available for other people to see. That's an accountability thing. That is holding the company accountable. It's making other potential recruits look at this, and it makes employees proud to work for a company that is open and honest about its business transactions and its business force. Interesting enough, you'll see in some countries like the UK now, it is mandatory that companies of a certain size have to publish their pay, the pay for all employees, and they have to show medium and mean pay grades. And so you can easily find out companies now that how their pay structure is, and it's New York now is putting that in. There are in Canada, where I'm from, there is now, if you're federally working for the federal government, you have to put pay there. So pay is becoming a much more of a transparent thing, and people looking for work appreciate that. We have this weird connection with money, and when we talk about pay, but let's be honest, we're all out there to make a living and provide food for our family and put items on the table to have a healthy family. So. But really what we're trying to say here is that diversity really allows us to connect, to be more collaborative, and to be more creative. And I think it helps solve problems and really look at how we can do a better job of creating great products and a great company. So really at Happy Hive, when we looked at that one key word, the one element that was important, it's really teams. The team element is that one word. It's, we hire individually, but we expect you to work in a team. No one, it's the example of Howard trying to figure out the ET game on his own. It's impossible to be working as a solo person. So having a team and understanding the team dynamics is really important. And so I want to talk a little bit about this. There's a very famous coach, and he's a team coach, it's Patrick Lencioni, and he really argues that teams are essential to the success of any organization, and that effective teams are built on 5 elements. And if you get a chance and you can read some of his work, it's really great stuff. But the elements of teams are really about building trust. And he talks a lot about, holding people accountable. But really, at the end of the day, if you can create a good team, you're going to have a great company, and you're going to have people that want to work for you. The challenge is, and I don't care if you're a small company or a massive company, it is probably one of the biggest challenges people have, is creating teams, is understanding team dynamics, is understanding how they work, and what you can do to improve those teams. And so I think the first thing that we often look at is that the absence of trust. Remember when I mentioned the fact that we're bringing, we bring some women together into a group and expect them, we can't understand why they leave. One of the fundamental reasons is an absence of trust. And when you don't trust each other, you're not going to be honest. You're not going to say when things aren't right. You're not going to collaborate. And you have to almost be vulnerable, which is very hard for a lot of people. And it really stems from the top down. If the manager or the owner is vulnerable and says, again, trust isn't your past. It's not knowing, oh, I know she can get the job done. Trust is for the future. Trust is looking at, can I share my mistakes with you and not be reprimanded? Or can I share my weaknesses that I don't feel comfortable doing this, or I need to learn a little bit more and maybe you know more and you can help me? Those are the elements of trust. And that is the starting ground of where teams will break down, is this lack of trust. But the second dysfunction that many teams have is this fear of conflict. And I know this for myself. I mean, having to bring up something with a teammate that is maybe isn't going right is a very uncomfortable feeling, and a lot of people avoid it. And so what ends up happening is we have these back channel conversations where I start to diss on so-and-so because they didn't do the work or it wasn't right, or rather than actually during a meeting saying, hey, this isn't working out. And again, it's not about your character, it's about the work. And I've seen some really great solutions to this problem. And it's providing guidance as a manager or as a team leader to how to do this. So often people will actually set up a conflict, coach. So one of the individuals on the team is actually there to look and see if there is something, and to actually at that meeting get through it and not taking it offline. Because again, if you take it offline, that means it's never going to be solved and this problem is going to come back again. So the third dysfunction is lack of commitment. And when the team members are not committed to the goals and objectives, then you're going to have a challenge actually coming through with a great product and creating a great team. So you really have to set clear understanding of what you're trying to do and everybody to buy into it. So it's not just a leader saying this is what we're going to do. It's the team then deciding how they're going to do it and what's important. And it's not about consensus, because consensus waters down ideas. It's about everybody believing the same way and going through it. And I'm not saying this is easy. It's tough to do, but that's where we get breakdown in these teams. And this is why teams can sort of become dysfunctional. And really, I want you to think while we're going through this, is your team hitting any of these? Because I think when you do this exercise, you can actually see that there are elements of this that maybe your team can work on. So when we talk about responsibility now as another core issue. And Pat Summit, she was a great athlete. She was a volleyball coach. And she grew up in a time when women's sports was really undervalued. And she became a huge advocate for equal rights, equal ownership of women and sports. And I think, this quote has been used a lot, but it really speaks to this sense of ownership. Because again, another dysfunction is if I don't have ownership of the idea and avoidance of accountability. So if somebody can get away, and we all have seen this in bad jobs, excuse me, where somebody gets away with doing something and there's no accountability to that action. And that, how does that make you feel? How does it make your team feel? And when they're not held up accountable, you have to sort of have clear performance goals so that, again, people feel that they're all working together. They all feel like there's ownership to it. and they're responsible for those goals. And often people, again, will publicly talk about those goals. And I think that's a fantastic way of making people accountable. Because if you put it out there, people understand that that's an important part. So again, the last dysfunction is the personal goals over team goals. And I think it's important to understand that team results is what we're really trying to get here on a team. But often we're compensating people for personal results. And so what does that do? Again, we're not building the team spirit. We're not building that team dynamics. We're not looking at the results overall. So again, really understand that that's the fifth element of what we need to do. So what are we doing at Happy Hive? We took a look for the last 2 years at this, and we thought there's got to be a better way to hire. There's got to be a way that we can bring all these wonderful things, meaning building diversity. We talked about that importance. How do we build better teams? And at the end of the day, that will build better products. So the Hive Advantage. And again, it's really some of our learnings. Again, we gave the example of what's going on with Etsy. But rather than, that's a big company that can afford to do that. But what we're looking at is we're creating opportunities for women to sign up again for hackathon or challenges where we go to companies and we get what their challenge is. So again, it's not just a little test that you're giving somebody, you're giving us a challenge. And these different teams, based on their skills, we pull together teams, will be working on your challenge. And it allows you an opportunity to really understand the thinking, how they work. You can then compare different teams and sort of get an understanding of what's working, what's not. It's also a great way to put your company out there, right? When you're doing these game jams, is you can have an opportunity to say, look, this is what we stand for. These are the type of games we make. This is how we work. This is what's important to us. And we will find the different groups and create these different groups of women. So again, a lot of women, and I've talked to many, will not get involved in any kind of hackathons or game jams because they feel like they'd be dismissed, or they'd be given the job of, taking notes or building the UX design, and they're not really given the really great opportunities. So by having women all on a team, you have the confidence, they can build the camaraderie, and they get a sense of how each other work. And the other thing, because we're doing this right now, we're piloting right now, and watching these women and how appreciative they are to kind of meet other women and feel a sense of a team. And it's not about one person getting picked over another. Our goal is these women will be picked together when they get a job. So if it's 2 of them or 3 of them, based on the company's needs. So if the company, what type of industry or what type of skills they're looking for, these teams will be made up of people of those skills. And so it allows us to kind of spend a whole month working on a problem, really looking at how their synergy is, what are their challenges. One of the first things we do for this group is we give them a test, and it allows them to see how they learn, how their behaviors are. Now we use a product called DART, which anybody can look. It's a little bit more inexpensive than some of the other tests that are out there for personality tests, but it gave them all a sense, because a lot of us actually don't know how we learn, or we don't know what our trigger points, what sets us off, or how do we communicate with each other. And so by understanding each team has these tests, and they get a little bit better understanding of who they are, how they work, and how their teammates work. So they're already building a bond even before they're hired. They're already starting to create a synergy. They're already starting to know each other. And they're starting to support each other, and they're learning from each other. And that's one thing I hear from the teams I'm working with right now is they're working on everything from chatbots to some UX design. And they said, we get to really, some of the areas I'm not very good at, and I'm learning as I go. And the companies that work with us have a technical advisor as part of these coaching sessions, these game jams or these hackathons, to be there to answer questions or give give kind of feedback or results. So again, it's not a quick, I've got an hour to interview this person, another hour the next week, and I have to make a decision. It allows everybody to feel more comfortable with each other. It allows teamwork to grow. But really, where the kicker is, we've got a coach. So these women aren't doing this all on their own. And these coaches are special, just in the same way that you have game coaches or people have game coaches, we've got team coaches. And the coaches that are working with Happy Hive right now are unbelievable. And they really help these groups through any challenges. So are they getting stuck in areas? Are they learning how to communicate better? How are they dealing with conflict? So all the things that Patrick Larsoni was talking about, that we went through the 5 dysfunctions, she's trying to hit it off at the pass. She's trying to decide, okay, let's really see what you're doing and how you're doing this, so that we know what and if you need intervention, or how we can go about doing this. And a coach isn't a teacher. As you know, a coach is really there to give some direction. But really, at the end of the 4 weeks that these women go through these programs, they're the Hive Advantage. They learn themselves how to deal with it. And that's part of what a coach is doing, is trying to give them the skill set. So guess what happens then? When they join your team, they already have a sense of your culture, because they've gone through a month of a game jam with you. They've got a sense of each other, and they have an understanding of how they work and how the team works, and they support each other. So even if you have 2 or 3 of them and you split them up and then go into different departments, they still have, it's sort of like going to a co-op. Think of it like when you went through a co-op program. You stayed friends with your co-op, and you might even have gone job to job with that co-op person. That's what's happening with these women. They're forming relationships and bonds. And the coach is there for the first 90 days. That's Happy Hive's promise. Will come in and help with those first 90 days, because that's pivotal to getting people on board, feeling comfortable, feeling part of the team. So finally, because I know, we're coming up near the end, let's innovate the hiring process. I mean, I think out of anybody that I'm talking to, the gaming industry is probably the most innovative. And so why not innovate the hiring process? Really look at your hiring practices. And again, you don't need Happy Hive for this. You can go out and do this yourself. But I mean, it's the learning that we've seen from all these companies that are doing it is track your numbers as a business imperative. Don't leave it to thoughts or one person that has, an HR, because that's not what this is about. It's about really understanding how you can, where these people are coming from and how they make a better team for your company. Again, look at your job description and language. That's the first place that people will see. And I will argue too, where you're advertising for those roles comes hand in hand, because if it's constantly in the same place, you're just getting to the same people that you always see. And again, finally, ask your recruiters what they're screening for. And if you are interested in really learning about the Hive Advantage, we're working very tirelessly. This is a pilot. We are tracking it. We are researching the results of this and how this could help to get more diversity within a company, build happier employees, expand the embeddedness of all your employees, and make better products. So I'm going to stop sharing. I do have a couple questions that I just want to leave before I know we go to the Q&A, Dan. But, really, again, it's just having a little bit of a discussion about what's working well with your hiring practice and what you need to do differently. I would also argue, think about the best team you've ever worked on, what was great about it, why, and what was the worst team you worked on and why. And consider, are your teams really acting as a team? And, I can count many times in my career where we were not a team at all, and the dysfunction and the time wasted on backstabbing and, oh my goodness. So, and are you creating a culture, retain your best people? When you have those people there, what are you doing to ensure that they stick around and they help the next generation of your new recruits to be part of those best team? So I think I will stop sharing my screen now.
Excellent. Can you hear me?
I sure can.
All right. All right. So we have a really good comment here. I just want to bring this up. This was from way at the beginning.
Oh,
I'm hiring an entry position, and you must have 30 years of experience and be under 25 years old.
I love it. I love it. Yes.
Man, that post that you shared in the beginning, and then it had this thing, and then it was $9.50 an hour.
Yeah. I know, but you see, this is a challenge that, a lot of people assume that, that the job description doesn't really mean anything. They don't spend any time on it. They just cut and paste things, and they're not really looking at what the need is and what the skill set is. And so it just becomes the barrier for many people, and that's what we're trying to prevent.
Right. All right, let's see here. Click on this, click on that. What all the things I'm clicking on? Okay, we've got quite a few questions. We can burn through these pretty quick. Here we go. This is from Discord. How do you feel about employers designing tests that require applicants to spend several hours on them, but provide no feedback on their performance?
Well, I wouldn't. I mean, personally, I wouldn't do it.
Right.
I mean,
Me neither.
part of it is, again, people think that getting a job is all in the employer's hand, and it's all about the employer. And they are the first. Oh my God, I got a job offer. Oh my God, I can't believe it. This is great. They don't negotiate. They don't look at it. The time, it's your time, is just as valuable as theirs. And I always use this expression of, if you put all your eggs into one basket, that's your job. A company doesn't care. A company has 100 employees, 50 employees. They just get another one. This is your career. Right. This is your career. You're putting everything into this. So you have to treat this as your time. And you could ask the employer and say, before I take this, are you going to give me any feedback? And again, if they say no, I wouldn't bother, because then it's like putting your resume into a black box and never hearing back. It's very frustrating and just makes you feel like shit, personally. So don't do it.
Don't do it. Right. Well, I know, because I was a 3D animator for a while, and there was a lot of companies that wanted you to do an animation test, and you're like, but I've got this demo reel that has hours of animation in it, and I didn't know how I felt about that. I mean, I guess I can understand that in specific situations, like if it's a particular niche kind of thing that is within your skill set, but you don't have the experience of it. I mean, I can see that, but I don't.
But often, they won't even let you have that opportunity, right? Like often you won't even be screened past that if you don't have that skill set. Right. And that's where the challenge is, where everybody keeps complaining they don't have enough. The pipeline is there. It's just got lots of blocks along the way.
Right.
We need to open those up.
Exactly. I agree. Here's another one from Discord. As a woman, I personally struggle with finding opportunities in the industry. What actions can I take to feel more empowered in my professional background?
Yeah, and that is, I work with a lot of women in AI, for example, and it's a common struggle. But what I found is a lot of women are going into these groups, and I know there's gaming groups that are out there for women. There's that you can belong to and get opportunities. Like we just did a hackathon with a group. We want to do a game jam. And so, but if it's a focus on something, it gives you that experience. You get to meet other people. You feel more confident. You can put it on your resume, because you've done this, you've built something, you've been part of it. And that's the whole thing of Happy Hive, is that we want to create these teams, give them those opportunities in a safe space where they're coached, with the company being involved so they can see, so that they can have input and back. So back to your point about getting no input, we want input. We want to learn. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? How can we be better employers? So I would suggest that is just getting involved with any kind of organizations that are out there, and they can help out a lot.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, here's another. We've got all kinds of questions from Discord. When it comes to writing resumes and cover letters, ChatGPT has become the new standard. What is your opinion on this? And do you believe it provides applicants with an advantage?
Interesting. I have to admit, I love ChatGPT. I love it. I just find it so fascinating and fun. Well, I mean, I would totally use it. It's there, it's available. It helps you with the cover letters. Cover letters are awful to write. I hate them. hate cover letters. I hate resumes. So, and the amount of time you have to spend on creating those, and let's be honest, half the time it never even gets to the right people. So using that to speed up is only to your advantage, and I would totally use it. And it also helps you go through companies, and it will allow you to look at what companies stand for. Because I do like doing, rather than just blindly sending out resumes, I like to study the company. Is it going to be a good company to begin with? Does it have a bad rap? Like, do I even want to work for a company like that?
Are they going to want me to have 5 years experience in an entry-level position and then
pay me $9? Exactly. And that's why I'm saying about transparency. It's like, you know, where are companies coming from? We need to demand more from companies.
Right.
And we should.
For sure. So ChatGPT is amazing, and I love to mess with it. It's all in the prompt, right? I like to have it write something and then have it grade itself with a letter grade and tell me why it gave you that grade, and then have it rewrite it again, but making it an A+. And it does that. Awesome. It's amazing. It's so fun to mess with.
It is. But, so I would totally use it.
I love it. Okay, here we go. Another one from Discord. Many companies tend to employ individuals without providing any proper onboarding. What suggestions would you offer to start to someone who is expected to have all the knowledge right from the start? Oh my gosh, that's a good one.
Oh, it's a good one. It's a really good question, and you're right. It's this again. I would do it while I'm interviewing for a company job. I would say, what is your onboarding process? And even before I take that job, because you're right, like I have seen disasters happen where they're like, oh, we're a family, we're going to help you through it. And then after a month, they're like, you're not up to scale, you know, you're not doing what we want you to do, and you're gone. So I think the onboarding is a good question to ask. What is your expectation? There's also a great book out there, The First 90 Days. I can't remember the author's name, but you read something like that, it'll tell you what are great attributes, what you should do. And the biggest thing is, what is your expectation of me? Like, just say it outright. What if for the next 90 days, just like our, you know, the presidents, when they come in the first 100 days, what is your expectation the first 90 days? And if you don't like what you hear, don't take the job, because it's again, back to, you're putting all your eggs in this basket. It's got to be good. It's got to be a good basket.
Right. Okay, let's see here. Let's do that one. How much time are you looking at? Okay. Here's a long one. Another one from Discord. After being jobless for several months, I've encountered some extremely unpleasant interactions with recruiters. It's quite demoralizing for me. Do you think that such negative experiences have become the new standard in applicant-recruiter interactions?
Unfortunately, I'll tell you that recruiters have been not doing a great job for years. It's not just now. And I'm sorry, your experience. It's countless people have it. And that's part of the reason why I started Happy Hive. I'm a filmmaker. I do other things. I'm not a tech person, but I was just like, this is such a bad way of hiring people. I hate it. So your experience is a common one. And unfortunately, but you know, there are, again, ways to know that, again, finding colleagues or other people that are in the same boat, that maybe you get on Discord and you have discussions so you can all kind of bolster each other up. It's always about learning, like just even reading a book or a podcast, listening to a podcast about things that you're interested in can help you to feel more emboldened and excited about your career of your choice. And then again, I don't blindly send out resumes. I would never do that. I research companies, and sometimes it's the weirdest things. Like I've heard people 50, I don't want to go out of the 50-mile radius of my house. I don't want to commute, or whatever, 20 mile. And they start looking at companies around those areas. Right. So pick a different way of, just in the same way we want companies to stop recruiting that way, stop doing the same things that you're doing. Maybe will help you to kind of break up and look at it differently. But I would find a group. It's always nice to be with other people that are experiencing, you know, you can commiserate with and go, oh my God, help me.
I love the, it's the meme, you know, on Facebook, they have like I applied for this job and and it's a whole little story. The story of the guy that he got fired from his job, and then 2 weeks later, a recruiter reached out to him to hire him for the job that he just got fired from. Oh. So he actually went into the job interview and he had like a fake mustache. And he went through like this whole process, and then we're getting him snacks. And then at the end, he goes, how did you how did you realize it was? He goes, ha ha, and he rips off the mustache. But they already knew. But I mean, that's just hilarious. Okay, we've only got a minute, so I'm going to ask this last question right here. What psychometric testing do you use in the hiring process?
So we use something called DISC. And you can actually do a test. You do it yourself. I think there's a free version. It's not as in depth as what we would do, but it's really a great. It's a great assessment tool to give you some idea of your strengths.
So what does that do exactly? What kind of questions?
Ask you a series of questions. So it could be everything like, how do you deal with this? Like, how do you feel about this? So it'll give you different experiences and different situations and sort of get your response.
And then like multiple choice answers?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They'll give you, and from that, they can decide. I can't even remember what the acronym stands for now, but because I have people that do that all for me. So they do. And it's nice to have, we have a professional coach that takes the teams through what their DISC results are, but it's kind of fun to do.
That's neat.
You can do it yourself. As I said, you can see, a little bit more about your personality and how you respond to what your triggers are and how you learn. So
I'm also a community manager for a charity, and we have something like that shows us our top 5 attributes or whatever. So here, I'll do the quick follow-up question. How specifically do you use it in the hiring process?
So we use it for our team building. We don't hire people, we create teams and we coach them, and then they get hired by companies. So, but we use it at the very beginning, Shelley, so that we can say, each teammate will know how each other works. And it just gives you a confidence to know, I'm really good at this. I am really good at this. I'm really good at communicating or whatever it is. And then your teammates also know, hey, Shelley's really good at communicating. So we can, it just gives everybody a little bit more, like half the time we don't even know our teammates anymore. We're sitting on these computers and we never even get to talk to each other.
Except for Zoom. Right?
Except for
the scrum and the stand-up, right?
Yeah. So
we have that because we use Paylocity, and so all of that you can look up people's things in Paylocity. Paylocity is like the whatever it tracks. You can put a journal and it tracks your hours and all that kind of stuff.
Oh wow!
All right. Okay. Well, thank you so much for that. Next,
great questions.
We've got great questions. There's other questions as well, but we don't have time for those. We have an amazing panel right here. What does it say? A round table that explores a creative approach behind promoting indie games. And this is going to be interesting, and that is coming up right away. So thank you so much, Kaaren, for being here with us. We really appreciate you. And we'll see you all in just a minute, everybody.